Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Break free from the forces holding you back. Get the life you deserve. Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, decrease depression, and start living your full potential. Thousands have used Dr. Foojan Zane's awareness integration theory, an evidence-based behavioral health breakthrough with incredible life-changing results. Getting rid of past trauma, having fulfilling relationships, increasing earnings, and living their best life. Now, the Foojan app is available to everyone. The app is Dr. Foojan Zane's awareness integration theory in the palm of your hand. Download the Foojan app today.
Do you wish to wake up one day and hit the Life Reset button? Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want by Dr. Foojan Zane, helps you navigate crucial life areas, heal the past traumas, and cultivate fulfilling relationships and careers. Life Reset is your guide to a profound journey to reshape your life. Grab your copy on Amazon or Audible now and embark on a path to a more joyous and fulfilled life.
Welcome to the Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan Zane, a psychotherapist, author, and the creator of the Awareness Integration Theory. So thrilled to have you join us today for a great conversation and insightful discussion. In this episode, I chat with Amy Margolis. She's a licensed social worker, a licensed therapist, and a co-clinical director of Santa Monica Counseling. Amy works with individuals and couples and runs groups for clients seeking healing in eating disorders, addictions, anxiety, depression, and all the related issues. She also supervises associate social workers and associate marriage and family psychotherapists in gaining all of their expertise in clinical hours. Outside her clinical world, Amy's also a Meisner and grounding trained actor who has focused primarily on voiceover work. She's worked for Nickelodeon, Netflix, Disney Junior, and on many commercials, podcasts, and video games. So it's really fun. She's really a fun girl to talk to. And she knows her work. So today we'll be actually talking about her latest book. Here's the Memo, a life guide for women. And I know that we have a lot of good conversations about boundaries and how to create emotional freedom for yourself, and where is it that you get caught, and you know, how to be in your relationships with, you know, as a parent, as a mate, as an individual, how to care for yourself, how to let go of all the buts and the onlys and things that are holding you back. And although she is an advocate for women and the book is for women, I promise you, men, this is pretty much universal conversation. So you're going to get as much of an added value as all the women who are listening. You can follow Amy on Instagram at Here's the Memo, on Facebook at Amy Margolis. And you could get her, she's working on her website on amymargolis.com. So be sure to also subscribe to this podcast. Yes, this podcast, and my YouTube channel. And connect with me through my website, foojanzane.com. Connect with the app, Foojan app. We've got 31 areas that you could actually work toward any of their life areas and really see a lot of improvement. We've seen almost up to 60% improvements. I really recommend for you to go to the Foojan app or connect with me on any of my social media platforms. So share yourself with me, share your thoughts with me. I'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, here's Amy Margolis.
Intentional Parenting, a practical guide to awareness integration theory, written by Dr. Jafari, Dr. Foojan Zane, and Dr. Manoukian, 3 experts in human development, is your step-by-step guide to raising a healthy child prepared for a culturally integrated world. You're supported in parenting infants to adolescents using the latest evidence-based scientific research on parenting. Order your copy on Amazon now.
Eliminate stress, reduce anxiety, and decrease depression. Dr. Foojan Zane's awareness integration theory has helped thousands like you get incredible life-changing results. The Foojan app gives you her evidence-based treatment in the palm of your hand. Download today.
Well, hello, Amy Margolis. It is so nice to have you on the show.
And it's so nice to be here. It's an honor.
It's great to have another fellow therapist who has been in this field for so long. And it is awesome to know that you have written a book, which is called Here's the Memo.
Here's the
And here's
memo.
the memo. And I was like intrigued why this name. And in introduction, it says, you're right. Every time, we pass by something, it's like, how come people knew and they didn't give me the memo? Like, how come I didn't know about that? And sometimes we find things as we go through the experience, and we wish somebody would have given us some pinpointers and in how to do the things we needed to do. So that's what the book is about. So thank you for writing that. But what got you to want to write this book?
I think I always wanted to write a book. I grew up in a family that didn't talk about anything, and I became anorexic. And so finding my way out of that, going to therapy was a no-no. And finding my way out of that and getting into recovery and talking about feelings was so groundbreaking. But then as I kind of hit every chapter of my life, like dating, getting married, going through loss, heartbreak, there just wasn't access to, there's so much access now. Nobody needs my book, but my book is kind of all the memos or the exercises that really worked for me to navigate those chapters. So I wanted women to not feel so alone as they go through different things in life. And I think what happened recently is my kids have grown up, and I've noticed in my private practice just so many women, almost all of the women I work with, have some version of a deprivation or anorexic mindset. I don't like to use that word loosely, but just a mindset that they're constantly robbing themselves of their own power because of appearance, just because of this patriarchy that we've grown up in. So I started getting fired up in the last couple of years to just get my book out.
Amy, I've also noticed that men, let's say adolescent boys, are also going through this. At one point, it was mostly girls who were going through this type of deprivational thinking and anorexia. Haven't you noticed that there's a lot more of this conversation about how you should look like, even coming up for boys, like for all of us?
Yes, I definitely think that. And I think with social media, it's more. And if we really want to get clinical, eating disorders are self-regulation disorders. So certainly, I mean, I have male friends who have had eating disorders and are in recovery. So I definitely don't want to ignore that at all. And my book is more about women because just from a young age, I mean, these boys are socialized to look at women in bikinis and look at women in, it's men are very visual and we become objects. So I am all for men, love men, have good men in my life, and they definitely, choose eating disorders or eating disorders, choose them to regulate and control. And I guess I'm just a champion for women.
Talked about the regulation and how any of the conditions could be a way that we choose unconditionally in order to regulate ourselves. So when you talk about yourself and your own experience, and you also obviously come from a wealth of information and experience with your clients, can you share a little bit about this concept of the deprivation thinking and how our system attempts to regulate it in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way?
Well, I think, speaking for me personally, I decided at a very young age, I think I was 3, that I was too big. I had an older sister who was one of those tall, skinny people out the gate, and she was my reference point. And I'm like, I got to lose weight at 3. And, then there were things that went on, a little chaos growing up that food became my best friend, my company, the thing I could control and manipulate, the thing I looked forward to. And I think that's true for a lot of kids because it's the thing that's accessible. And it's also very nurturing, right? So I think it's just it's right there for kids that grow up with chaos or trauma to use food to control their environment or feel comforted. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think people choose food to regulate trauma and feelings when there's not a safe place to talk about them. So I don't know if I answered your question or if I answered a whole new question.
No, it was beautiful. I know that my own experience with food had been very nurturing.
Yep.
And I remember as an infant, toddler, and even in a younger age, part of the concept of food was also associated with being in my mother's arm and, breastfeeding, and that kind of, the cuddly was there. And then when she wasn't available, this concept of food and, being around, somebody's body so that it would hold me. And then it was, okay, hold me. And if I can't do breastfeeding, then I can actually have food. So this concept, like what you shared, and food is partying, food is socializing, food is everything, everything in our cultures, and every culture. It isn't just to say in the Western culture or an American culture. In every single culture, I think food has become part of the socialization and, how it brings people together. So I totally agree in how, we put so much emphasis on that. And I remember, for example, when a child, cries, the first thing you do is put either a pacifier or give them something, so they can eat, so that they can feel comfortable. So the eating is definitely a concept of nutrition and a comfort in nutrition that we get. But you're also so accurate about that it gets convoluted with this concept of gaining weight and what we look like. So it now adds to the next level of, what do I do with my emotions if every time my emotions are coming up and I can't do much about it, nobody's hearing it, nobody's teaching me what to do with it, then stuffing ourselves with comfort food also becomes the next level of comforting ourselves. So I think this concept of dual association, which one is pleasure.
Yeah.
And then if our metabolism doesn't take it that way, then it's also the concept of pain.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I love the definition of addiction. We think it makes us feel better, but it really robs us of life. And I think people choose eating disorders or, get eating disorders as a cover for trauma, right? And then it keeps us up spinning in our head. Why did I eat that? Oh my God, I'm a glutton, this and that. So we're in this cycle of like self-hate instead of dropping in and dealing with the original trauma or dealing with the reprocessing or the pain of that. So I think, it just adds a whole layer of self-hate over the trauma, right? We're never getting to the root.
Yes, absolutely. How did you go through the recovery for yourself or healing yourself and knowing that this is the route that I need to take is healing? One part of what you said in your book is, let go of the buts and if onlys and just create another system for yourself. So can you share a little bit about that?
Well, if we're talking about eating disorder recovery, I wouldn't recommend my plan because I was lost. So I went to therapy and it was recommended I do family therapy. My family wasn't into that. And it took me a while to find what I really needed. And then I found a group, but it was kind of a mishmash of different eating disorders. So some people in the group were finding freedom by weighing and measuring or not eating sugar or flour. And that was the worst thing I could have done because I was so good at rules and not eating. And so I sort of inherently knew, no, I got to break free and eat all things. And I think it's tough because I was so skinny that when I tried to eat all things, I was eating my face off. So then I was convinced I'm both. I'm a compulsive overeater and an anorexic. So then you can't win. So it took me a long time. And I think it's important to note that because I think a lot of bulimics and anorexics think they're real gluttons. And the truth is they're overeating because it's a backlash from the restriction or they're physically hungry. So I think there's a number of people in the wrong recovery. If yeah, that's my opinion. And I think most eating disorders start with anorexic thinking, which is I shouldn't be eating. It's not okay to have needs. I'm bad for wanting to eat, all the things. I think it's whether you're obese or emaciated, I think that is the root for most eating disorders that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Well, you share that, instead of ruling your life, kind of inform your life, and you could restrict your life in some levels of putting buts and onlys and everything, or you could create, as you say, goals that you could move forward with and kind of design your life based on the information versus
Yes.
putting strict. Because as I hear you, and I've done that myself, is I can always put a strict rule on myself for a period of time.
Yep.
And then usually the stricter the rule is, the worse the backlash will be, because
Yes.
it's just something that we all do as human beings, right? Like teenagers want to go, if your family is very strict, usually the teen and the youth just want to go out and experience everything that nobody allowed them to do. So there's what I'm also sensing from what you're saying in your book is inform yourself, educate yourself, but then hold some balance, instead of holding these like ruthless structures around yourself.
Yeah, I think that I can speak for myself and a lot of people I know, they think if they give themselves complete freedom, they're going to go bananas. They're going to shop too much. They're going to eat too much. They're going to, like, if they give themselves freedom. But actually, the opposite has been true in my life. When I say you can eat anything you want, you can buy anything you want, it loses its luster. It just becomes food. Okay, it's good, but you know what I mean? It just becomes, I got enough clothes. But I think what you're talking about is like with the buts and if onlys. Yes, as a young person, I always happiness was always right around the corner when I got the thing or got the guy or had the baby or moved to the place. And that's not true. I have this I'm an anorexic, so I have that drive, like, got to make it happen, got to get stuff done, then I'll be happy. And that's not true at all. Happiness is like, this is all I got. The past is over. The future never comes. It's really right now. And there's nothing out there. It's right now. Do you know what I mean? And to allow in fullness in life, on the plate, all the things, if that makes sense.
Very much, yes. There's also the conversation you're holding, which is about change and the process of change. Sometimes we think that in one day I'm gonna will it, and then after I will this, then tomorrow I'm gonna take these actions, and from there tomorrow is gonna be completely another way. It's not accurate in most, anything in our life. Usually the change, the transitions are phases, and these phases have their own processes of a little bit moving forward, moving backward, moving forward. And this is what we say also about psychotherapy, right? It's like couple of steps forward, couple of steps backwards, but every time you're moving, and you're integrating, because you're coming into something new, and then you kind of go back. And going back, I think a lot of people think of it as a failure, and a lot of times this is just part of the integration that happens through the change. Can you please share with us the process of change that you mean as people read your book and your ideas?
Yeah, well, there's a theoretical model for change that you probably are very aware of. I think it's James Prochaska. So there's different levels, like there's pre-contemplation when you're kind of in blissful denial, and then there's contemplation where, like, I might have a problem here. I might need to change. And then there's preparation where it's like, all right, I'm going to start doing A, B, and C, but you haven't done it yet. And then I think it's action where you start really doing it differently. And then there's maintenance. And I talk about in the book this notion of critter brain. I might not get this right. I'm definitely not a neurologist, but there's brain one. I think it's the brain stem, and it's survival. So it's like our digestion, our breathing. And then brain two is emotional brain. And I think that's the amygdala, where we store all our memories. And brain 3 is our prefrontal cortex. That's our thinking brain. That's the conscious part. So I know for me, I can be going along great, changing, and then I'll just have a day where I just feel horrible. And that's like my brain bringing me back to the familiar, to the old stories I made up as a kid about myself. And I think everybody should know about critter brain because our brains, brain 1 and 2, I guess it's reptilian and mammalian, they're there to protect us. Like the brain sees any change as a threat. So even if you're changing and doing great, relapse is almost normal. Or having a bad day where you say, forget it. I thought I could change, but I can't. It's very normal as part of the process. And that was something I learned. I wish I learned it a long, long time ago. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense for folks, but it's like our brains will want to bring us back to the familiar. So if you've been drinking to self-soothe for years and you get sober and feel great, you might have a relapse or you might have cravings. And it doesn't mean you've lost your progress. It means get back on kind of thing.
And I think that every one of us learns from these processes because I've worked with, for example, domestic violence, created shelters and transitional housing programs for women who were going through abuse. And, we all thought that if you just offer the home and offer the jobs and offer the childcare and all of that, all will be okay and everybody's waiting to leave. Well, our experience was sometimes it took all the way to 7 times before, someone would come out, experience a little bit of independency, and then would go back to the, abusive relationship,
Yes.
and then they would come back. And sometimes it would take that long, even, working almost 30 years with addiction. Same thing. You see, like you said, people will want to let go, we want to quit, they go into the recovery process, and then they relapse. But, I've walked through with clients who have relapsed, and you could see that every time there is a relapse, there's another layer of learning. Every time they go to recovery, it's not that they went back to step 1.
Yes.
It was a lot of learning, and sometimes you need to go back and forth between the new and the familiar place and the new and the familiar place until the new also becomes a familiar place.
Yes.
And what you used to have at a familiar place changes and it no longer becomes acceptable. So the process is a beautiful process. But I also think that based on some of the chapters in your book about the emotional freedom, I also think the concept of emotional freedom, as you share, is part of that movement forward, right? So we don't know what we do with our emotions. We are learned from our parents. We hide it, we hold it, we share it. We share it too much, and the society says, that's too much. Put it, So we have to do all of these testing to figure out who am I and what do I do and what is my emotional freedom? Or as I'm growing up, the world tells me that I got to listen to them, not listen to myself, right? How many of us go to school and you don't listen to what you need at that moment? You listen to what the teacher's telling you. That's the rule, and that's what you got to do. You go to somebody's house and you don't do just whatever you want. You're not painting the walls because you like to. You got to listen to the outside wall. And then we grow up and they're like, no, listen to yourself, or only look at what you can control and not the others. So part of this whole growth process is something that we're constantly learning. And I think that's what I also get from your beautiful book, which is sharing and saying, where are you caught? And can you open that? Can you allow it? Can you just be accepting and moving forward? And what is it that holds you back? So can you share a little bit about this part from your angle and your book?
Well, when I talk about emotional freedom, listen, we all want to do what we want when we want and have no rules. And we all have responsibilities and, confines of our life. I think it's more like knowing where you have a choice, right? So if your child is an addict, or if your boss is a jerk, or like the things that you can spin about this all day and it's not going to change it. So yes, have your feelings because those are really difficult things. and then come back to yourself and, you know, wherein lies your power to do the day ahead, right? Like maybe you pick a mantra whenever your boss is a jerk, or, you know, maybe you pray for your kid and you take the action you can and you surrender, you know, whatever it is to get you back in your own life and where you do have power, because that's the only thing we really have power over is our own attitudes and actions.
Mhm.
You know, and I know for me, if I'm struggling with something, it really helps me to tell a friend, okay, this is what my head's saying today, or I'm spinning about this today and it's not going to change. Me thinking about it is not going to change it. So how do I get freedom around it today? And how do I have the most, you know, if I can't get to joy, the most satisfying day I can, if that makes sense.
Yes, and it's also about noticing that when just me going through my thinking isn't going to change whatever it's out there, then it's the choice of either letting it go or to see what it is that I can do and then go ahead and do that. Because I think some people might hear it as, oh, then if it's something about outside and I have to keep letting it go, I'm resigning in the fact that, or I'm becoming powerless and hopeless about anything outside changing. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that you're looking at what you have control or you don't, and then the ones that you do have some control, then you go ahead and do the actions that you need to do, and the parts that you see you don't have control, then it's the part of letting go, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my goal here, because I'm a woman of a certain age, is I want to be happy and I want to give to the world, right? So, and I have a brain that like looks for what's wrong and what can I do to fix it. But I don't want that to obliterate everything that's good in my life. So for me, it's a practice because I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, I have to fix this or I have to do, you know, and I'm like, no, that's not yours. That's not yours. You don't have to, you focus over here, Amy. You know what I mean? And it just really helps me. And it helps all my relationships. Because if I'm waiting for somebody to change for me to be happy, then there's a wall up, there's no intimacy, there's no real connection, and it's not my business. Like, you know what I mean? It's not my business how other people live their lives. It's my business to be love and boundaries in my own life. I live with four people, like my kids and my husband, and you know, it's like a lot of energy. And my kids are a certain age, so they have a lot of freedom. And so I just try to be respectful and have boundaries, and it works out great. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Everyone, here's the memo by Amy Margolis. So when you talk about how to design this, when you could look at it and then you use wonderful words, which is, it's not my business, and where can I set the boundary? Can you share a little bit more about that for our audience?
Um, Gosh, I'm trying to think of an example. Um, well, one of my children has a pain disorder, which makes me really sad. I wish I could fix it. You know, so I helped her get help. I got the doctors, I got different supports in place. And then I paid for this program, and she didn't really use the program after I spent the money. And I realized, like, this is her journey, right? And I love her so much. And I think for me, taking massive action quells my anxiety. It gives me like the illusion that I have any control over this, which I don't. So with her, I have so much love for her. And now I just do more listening. You know, I do more listening. Yeah, I mean, she asked me for help, so I didn't go bananas on her, but over the years, I'm just saying I did a lot to make different appointments and do this and do that. And now I just kind of don't. I kind of listen. And the interesting thing is she's really navigating it and finding her own way with no input from me. Right. So it's like, yeah, I think giving people the dignity of their own choices and where they're heading. So I hope that was a good example. So now sometimes I get sad when I know she's in pain. So I give myself a minute to feel it. I pray on it, and then I give it to God. And, you know, I just love her. There's nothing I can do to fix that situation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I have a lot of people who, when I talk about what you just shared, they say, what do you mean? I shouldn't do anything? It's just like, what do you mean I shouldn't do anything? It just let her pain, let her go through this and that. And I know, like you shared, it is painful sometimes to allow, and it's not that you don't do anything, but you do, you're trying, and sometimes people take it and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they have to go, like you said, through their own journey to find theirs. So this concept of say what you need to say, do what you need to do, and then let it go and not
Yeah.
be attached to just because you said it or just because you did it, that the
Yes.
result has to become what you said and that it
Yes.
should be. But it's
Yes.
not also about, okay, let me just shut up and don't say anything, because I think, we do, like you said, I've done my work, I've done this stuff. And then I saw that it's not supporting her, it's creating more resistance in her, then possibly I can see the
Yes.
signs, see what's going on here, and maybe I could be there for her without pushing my agenda on her. Then she
Yes.
gets to actually grow into and get interested instead of spending her time resisting me. She actually now gets interested in how to take
Yes.
care of herself. And I think this is
Yes.
a very, very important fact that you're sharing
Yes.
um, about how to be with the outside world, that you do what you need to do and then let go. And I'm sensing that what you're calling the freedom, emotional freedom, is the letting go of the expectations of how the outcome is going to be.
Yes. Yes. And I think as parents, I mean, when they're little, we got to do all that stuff. As they get older, we have to just empower them to kind of do it. Yeah, but whenever you're trying to control somebody or get your agenda on them, it's usually your own anxiety and it will cause resistance or defensiveness. And people won't be left with their own stuff to feel. They'll be fending you off. You know what I mean? So um yeah, giving people the dignity of their own choices and their own lives, really.
This happens a lot in, obviously, marriages, intimate relationships, and dating. And you do have a whole chapter around those. Can you share a little bit about how this, kind of like tug of war, let's say, happens, especially in intimate relationship or marriages?
Well, I mean, you definitely know this stages of a relationship. Who I love Harville Hendrix said it best, like the romantic love where you just see rainbows and butterflies, and then the power struggle is when usually people want somebody to change so they can be happy. And then the mature marriage where you're just like, okay, this is who we are. Let's just lean in and have a laugh. Just acceptance, right? So most people come to therapy in the power struggle. I think in my marriage, I'll just talk about my marriage. I'm mature. I've grown up. I'm excited about that. But I will say whenever I'm looking at him, like what he's doing wrong or how he's annoying me, for me, it's almost like an intimacy issue at this point. It's like I really like the closeness, I'll be like, so get away, but that's because I need space or because the love is a little too uncomfortable for me. And my husband and I are from such different families. Like his parents had like that whole TV Brady Bunch type thing. They just did. And that's not my jam. I wanted that, but actually to inhabit it for me is a little more uncomfortable. And so yeah, whenever I'm looking at what's wrong with him or what he's not doing, I actually feel crappy. And then there's a wall in the relationship. And if I'm just like, let him do him and I come back and do me, we're happy. And there's a lot of levity. And I'm not saying we haven't gone through hard times and we were in the power struggle for many years, like most couples that, get to a certain point. But yeah, I guess that's what I'd say today how whenever you're looking at what they're doing wrong, you're cutting off the love and you're not focusing enough on your own life and your own happiness in your life.
They shared about Harville Hendrix. I've had Harville and Helen on my show a couple of times, and one of the things that for people who are listening to us, they're the originator of the Imago therapy. I love their work. I've
Yeah.
been certified in their work for so many years. And one of the things was interesting because they were igniting all of this beautiful concept. And then at one point they came around in one of the places like, okay, we're getting a divorce. And Ellen started looking at it, says, yeah, because I was standing there just making him wrong and wanting him to do all of these other pieces. And she really caught on to her own thinking of, and then both of them started looking at how do we brew all of these pieces of negativity in our own head about the other person, which, like you said, takes the love away, and it's not accepting the other person as who they are, but also looking at, if I'm being pissy about this, there's something, we usually think about they're making me pissy, but if it's something that is bothering me, to honor the voice that's coming inside of me, not dump it on them, but to honor it and see what is it that I'm really needing at that moment. And how can I share it or not even share it? Just kind of, go take care of myself, go lick my own wounds, go, self-care a little bit.
And there's so much at play because I think so many of us have a worthiness issue. So if everything's okay and this person just loves me, what? You know what I mean? So we kind of put a little sabotage out there or just say the thing to push it away. Because I think we're uncomfortable being so seen and so loved. And yeah, I think I just lost my thought, something you just said.
Well,
yeah, I think it's ego too, It's like ego, do it my way.
but I'm also thinking like, if you're always in the water, you get used to the water. The only way you get that you're in the water is if you're coming out and then feel the chills on your, on your body, or you dry yourself. And then you have also the experience of going back into the water. And I think when we are very, very close, there's a natural process of even wanting to appreciate the closeness is sometimes to kind of like move away from the closeness to come back to it. Yes. And sometimes the need for moving away from it, if we're not realizing it, it becomes like a repulse, or I don't want this. And if we're not making it mean like I don't want you, and it just means what you just said, knock knock, it just means that I need to, it's you're in the water and all is beautiful, and at one point you're like, okay, I don't want this anymore, and you need to get out of the water, and that's it. And sometimes you go back. So again, it's the process of change that you were talking about, but realizing that nothing is forever or can be. It just within it needs the change in order for us to feel alive. Sometimes that's what happens in marriages. Like we become so boxed into something that we lose the momentum and aliveness, because it just becomes we become part of the furniture, versus this, consistently bringing this movement inside that space where we could feel the aliveness, we could truly feel the intimacy, the passion, and then space, and then the passion and the space. So definitely, it's a beautiful concept that you shared. Everyone, here's the memo by Amy Margolis. Amy, anything we haven't shared that you really, really want people to know about your process, about the book, about, any of the notions, the concepts that we talked about?
I think what I would say is I just want people to know this is your life. Like, this is your life. And I think, I grew up before social media. So it was so easy to spend hours by myself in my imagination, like kind of creating my life. And I think these days, people get so sucked in, and then they start watching other people's lives, and then they're not enough, or they're not happy and like not doing it right. And for me, if I could just say, like, do something every morning just for you, get grounded in your day. What are you feeling? What are you wanting? What are you needing today? How do you want to show up before you let the noise of the world in? I really think that's so important, because this is your dash, right? Born dash, you die. This is your dash, and to live it powerfully. And if you have a dream in your heart, go for it. I say, I definitely have not left a stone unturned. And it's easy to fantasize about your dreams and think, oh my gosh, when I get them, I'll be so happy. And like, I've been that person that's gone after all of it. and it definitely didn't look like my fantasy, didn't feel like my fantasy. But better to do it than sit on the sidelines and watch other people do it. And just, this is it. It's not a dress rehearsal. So really love on yourself, take care of yourself, put yourself first in your life, no matter how many responsibilities you have. That's what I would say. Like, you're worth your own time and attention.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And then I say this to my friends, like my friend that's divorced, like, I just don't want to die alone. I'm like, we're all going to die alone. We're all going to die alone. Doesn't matter, you know? So like, you're kind of all you got, really. So put yourself first.
And the point is, you don't want to live alone, because sometimes you could be with people and
Yes.
feel alone, or you could be so much in this, concepts in your head and stuck in your head that you make yourself alone anyway, because you're not, you're disconnecting from people because of getting caught into all of these issues. So
Yeah. Yes, go for love and connection, but I think, like, don't make having a partner your solution. Like, just have love and connection, and when the partner comes, the partner comes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where can people find you, Amy?
So I'm in the process of redoing my website because it's archaic. So people can find me at Here's the Memo on Instagram, or they can just email me at amy@here'sthememo.com.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for taking this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
It was, of course, absolutely. And for all of you who are out there, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.
Are you a psychotherapist looking to enhance your practice? The Awareness Integration Therapy, developed by Dr. Foojan Zain, is a comprehensive guide to the principle and techniques of this powerful therapeutic approach. Join the growing community who have elevated their practice and expanded their skills by embracing Awareness Integration Therapy and witnessing its life-changing impact. Order your copy on Amazon now.